Hello and welcome back to That Tracks F1 podcast. It's great to have you here with me for the review of the Australian Grand Prix this weekend in Melbourne. Before we get underway, guys, could I please ask that you subscribe? I'd really appreciate it. And if you could also give us a follow on social media, I'm on Facebook and on Instagram as That Tracks F1 podcast. Thank you so much. It really does mean the world to me. So, how's everybody feeling after this first race? What do we think of the new regulations? Are we for them, against them? Personally, I think it's a little early to tell. I think there's a lot of factors at play. There's definitely more positives than negatives for me. But anyway, let's get into the race. The start was quite something. I don't know about anybody else, but I found the spooling of the turbos to be quite jarring to listen to. It's certainly not something we're used to, but no doubt we will get used to it. Heck of a launch from the Ferraris and the Mercedes, but I would say really the launch that really made me sit up and take notice was Leclerc's. The other thing, I don't know if anybody else saw this, but Franco had a real near miss with Lawson coming off the line, and all praise to Franco because how he avoided that crash, I do not know. His reaction time, it reminded me very much of Hadjar in the tunnel at Monaco. That footage everybody's seen where he jinks out round the stalled car in the tunnel at Monaco, it very much reminded me of that. And all praise to Franco because that really was incredible that he missed ploughing into the back of Lawson, which would have been absolutely awful. Obviously, we can't start talking about the race without mentioning poor Oscar Piastri. Absolutely devastating. My heart absolutely went out to him. Nobody wants that to happen in the first place ever to any of the drivers, and you certainly don't want it to happen to somebody at their home Grand Prix. Because obviously not only have you got your own frustrations and disappointments, but the weight of the expectations of your crowd and of the fans must be huge. And I should imagine Oscar's feeling pretty sorry for himself right now, and I really don't blame him. So chin up, Oscar. There's plenty more races to come, and I know they're not your home race. Although last year you did claim quite a lot of races as being your home race. It became a bit of a running joke. But yeah, it really is the Australia curse for you, and we thought the Australia curse for you was bad last year, and this year it really said, "Hold my beer," didn't it? As for the racing as it got underway, it was definitely interesting. I mean, in the first 9 laps, the lead changed 7 times, which it's been a long time since we've seen something like that. It was very watchable. It kept us very engaged. I don't know that this race really is a blueprint for what we can expect for the rest of the season because there's a number of factors at play. Obviously, there's going to be development as things move on with the cars. Different tracks are going to play a role. I know a lot of the drivers said that that Melbourne was probably one of the worst tracks to have started the season for getting used to harvesting the energy and deploying the battery, etc., etc. We're all sick of those phrases already, aren't we? But I think it's difficult to really take as much information as we possibly can away from this race and this result because we had 2 of what you would probably call the main contenders not really either not in the race or not up there where they should be. It's difficult to get a full read on where everybody is. Yes, it's very easy to say that the Mercedes clearly are rocket ships, aren't they? There's clearly quite a bit of sandbagging going on at testing. But I didn't think the Ferraris didn't look too shabby. I was really quite impressed with the Ferraris. I didn't really expect that much coming into this season because last season really was a struggle for them. They've definitely turned that around. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see unfold is the Ferrari and Mercedes battle. I think it'll also be really interesting to see how Lewis's year unfolds. I mean, anything's an improvement on last year. That really was a bad year for him. Nothing really went his way, and his relationship with his race engineer at Army was it just wasn't gelling. It was not a relationship that was ever really going to work out. They just didn't seem to be able to understand what each other needed and how each other communicated. So he's now got Carlo Santi as a race engineer, and it's too early to say how well that relationship's going to gel. The only fly in the ointment from what I can see is Carlo Santi isn't going to stay with him for the whole of the 2026 season. And he's actually going to get Cedric Michel Grosjean from kind of halfway through the season, I've heard. He's come over from McLaren, currently on gardening leave. And so he can't take over quite yet as Lewis's race engineer. And I'm not sure that I could be completely wrong. I don't know really whether there's an established relationship there between Cedric and Lewis, but it doesn't seem like a great idea really, or it doesn't seem ideal to be building a rapport with one race engineer and then swapping them out halfway through the season. But I don't know, it could happen. It was great to see Lewis turn up this weekend more like his old self. Understandably, he got very down last year. It's not at all surprising. It was an absolute struggle. And he's definitely come back. As he said, he's really, really worked on his fitness over the off season. He's trained as hard as he can, and he's definitely come back with a more positive attitude, a more positive, forward-thinking approach. Definitely ready to grasp this season with both hands. I should imagine the results in testing probably buoyed him up as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting watch to see how the rivalry between him and Charles develops over the course of the season. I think we could be in for seeing some really good battles there. And I hope so, because Lewis deserves that. Lewis deserves to have all the support he needs at Ferrari and to have the same chances at Ferrari that Charles has. And I'm sure the team will provide him with that. So I think that will definitely be an interesting watch to see how Lewis goes about this season. Obviously, last year, his year didn't get off to a terrible start. He won the sprint in China and everybody thought, oh, here we go. Here's Lewis at Ferrari. This is what we've been waiting for. And really the season just took a dive for him from there. So I'm not drawing any firm conclusions just yet. This again is a little bit vibes. I just think we're going to see a much happier Lewis and we're going to see points and podiums. And you never know a win, or maybe more than one win. That would be great. So I guess we'll just see how that unfolds for him. But for me, it's all looking good for him right now. But you can't leave Max out of it either. And Hadjar's certainly not sitting around either. He seems to be really taking the fight up there. Qualifying where he did in third was amazing, and it was absolutely great to see. We're all hoping, aren't we, that the Red Bull second seat curse is a thing of the past. So it was very difficult to see him go out the way that he did with a power unit failure, and that was really, really unfortunate because he would definitely finish well up in the points, in my opinion, and there might even have been an outside chance of a podium, which would have been great to see. Now, as for McLaren, it's difficult really to say, isn't it? It's difficult to get a handle on quite where they are. Obviously, we only had Norris in the race after what happened to Piastri. And I suppose it's quite easy to say that Norris had quite an anonymous race and didn't really do anything particularly special out on track. And he did more or less finish where he started. It's also important to remember, though, that he did have that damaged front wing. McLaren didn't have another nose cone to replace his damaged wing from where he ran over the cooling fan from Kimi's car that had fallen off onto the track. And despite all that, he still did a really stellar job of keeping Max Verstappen behind him, even after the pit stop. And Max really was breathing down his neck, and he really kept his cool and he kept it together. And I found that quite an interesting watch to try and compare the pace of the two cars. And they look to be fairly level. Difficult to say for sure. But I think Norris did an exceptionally good job of managing to stay ahead of Max. Max had carved his way through the rest of the field, and yes, I know that that's slower cars, etc. But that was some pressure he put Norris under, and Norris held his nerve and kept him behind. I'm still keeping the faith, guys. I mean, I know I predicted in the pre-season predictions that Norris for back-to-back World Drivers' Championships. I'm keeping the faith. Because I tell you what, it was easy to overlook him this weekend, but he bagged a solid 10 points, and you just don't know when those 10 points could make all the difference. McLaren are still trying to get to grips with this power unit. They're still trying to understand it. They don't have the advantages of knowing it as inside out as Mercedes do. So they're just going to develop. They're just going to get quicker as they come to terms with how this power unit is best used and how best to work with it. So if Norris can just keep getting these solid points finishes, he might not be setting the track alight. He might not even be on the podium every weekend, which is what we've been used to. But those points all add up. And over the course of the whole of the year, you just don't know. See? Keeping the faith, guys. Keeping the faith. I've got to get one prediction right. So, I just don't think that we can really write off McLaren. Well, you can never write off McLaren, can you? And I don't think you can really completely write Norris off because it's almost could potentially be like a little bit of a role reversal. Last year, I don't really remember George Russell setting the track alight. He just kept putting in solid finishes in the points, some podiums, the odd win, and he did extremely well, and I think this could be the case for Lando this year, that while he's not up at the top and everybody's not talking about him, and he just keeps plugging away there, and gradually McLaren will develop and that car will get faster, and before you know it, we're at the summer break and we're talking about how Lando's suddenly second in the championship and snapping at the heels of first. I don't know, maybe I'm delusional, but I just don't think that the performance this weekend was terrible, and I just don't think that you can count him out. So really, we're not going to have a clear idea of really where everyone shakes out in that supposedly top 4 teams. You've got 8 drivers there who really we need to see them all qualify where we would expect them to qualify. Like I say, in Australia, Max was down in 20th, Piastri didn't start. And until we've got all 8 of them more or less where we expect them to be on the grid and they're all piling down to that first corner, we're not really going to have much of a clear picture of quite who's going to come out on top or who's got the pace. And things will move on and develop. The FIA have brought the compression ratio test forward to June. Now, admittedly, apparently they're only testing the compression ratio at 150 degrees, which isn't reflective of the temperature that the engine reaches in race conditions, but it's certainly more reflective than it is stone cold. So that could have an effect as well on how things develop moving forward, depending what comes out of that. There's a long way to go. There's an awful lot of people who were doomsayers before this season started, saying that Mercedes were going to fire off the line and be 20 seconds up the road within the first couple of laps. And yesterday that wasn't the case. We didn't see that in Australia. I don't think, maybe occasionally on some of the tracks you might see that, but I don't think they're as far ahead as even they thought they would be. And there's a lot of catching up to do. I'm not saying the other teams don't have work to do. They absolutely do, but they'll do it. So I think we could be looking at a very different grid and some very different race results, even by the summer break. When it comes to positives in the race, I've already mentioned Hadjar and how well he did. And the other one that really caught my eye was Arvid Lindblad. I think he did incredibly well. He qualified extremely well, just one place behind his much more experienced teammate. And he really held his own at the beginning of that race. Must have been very, very daunting. You're coming in as a very young man of 18 into new regulations. You've qualified more or less slightly up from the middle of the pack. Nobody really knows how it was going to go coming off the line today. There'd been a lot of speculation about safety and cars moving slower or faster than others, and we certainly saw that with Colapinto's start. When Max finally got past him on lap 20, he didn't do it with any great ease. Lindblad definitely held his own against Max. So yes, to finish where he did in 8th place and get his 4 points, I think was a really, really good showing from Lindblad. And talking of Verstappen, that was another classic Max drive, wasn't it? Coming from 20th on the grid and carving his way up 14 places to finish in 6th and get himself some valuable points. I think it was a given in most people's minds. Everybody knew, yes, he's maybe started down in 20th, but he won't be in 20th for very long, and he'll definitely be in the points when we finished. And it really is a credit to the amount of skill that Max has that's not even a question in most minds now. It's an expectation that Max will do that he will carve his way through the field, and he certainly did. Other positives for me were Ollie Behrman, who put in a very mature drive, qualifying in 12th but finishing in 7th. Obviously, there were some retirements that helped with that. But again, a mature, good drive from Behrman. Bortoletto, who I really, really praised last year when he came into the sport. I really thought that he was definitely one to watch. And again, an extremely good job from him, finishing in 9th like he did. And Gasly again taking the last point on offer today, dragging that Alpine into the points yet again. You can't fault Gasly. He really is such an underrated driver. And obviously finishing off on the positives, plenty of praise for Mercedes, who really have produced a rocket ship. Both the drivers did extremely well. I would say that George has looked a little more comfortable over the span of the weekend than Kimi has. Obviously, his big off in free practice 3 was not the way he would have wanted things to go, but he's recovered very well to take that second place. And Ferrari definitely look like they're mounting a challenge this year. There's some question about the strategy that Ferrari employed, with some people feeling that the decision to keep both of them out on track during both of the VSC stints was perhaps not the right one, and it could have yielded a different result if they'd have made a different decision. Leclerc, in interviews afterwards, said that he felt that it wouldn't have made any difference. It's difficult to say, but we'll see how that unfolds going forward with the strategy decisions at Ferrari. I must admit, I agree with Lewis with what he said over the radio. Why didn't you bring one of us in? I just think it would have been worth a punt, wouldn't it? What had they really got to lose at that point? We saw McLaren do it last year, where they didn't come in under the VSC. And yes, decisions like that taken by the strategist are always a gamble, and you make the decisions on the information you've got at the time. But I still think bringing one of them in, probably Lewis, would have been the way to go, to just split the strategy and just see what might have unfolded. But I'm not paying a big wage to be a strategist, so I don't know. Just an observation. Now, for the less positive aspects of the weekend, obviously, Aston Martin. It really has been a bit of a disaster, hasn't it, the entire weekend? I think they did the best they could with what they've got currently, and it was encouraging that they sent Alonso back out to do what was basically an extended test session. But certainly at this stage, there is nothing to lose doing that, except maybe the feeling in Alonso's fingers. But really, it couldn't have been a worse start to the season for them. So I'm hoping that although this weekend has been absolutely nothing to write home about, that things will improve for them. Williams, well, as you know, Williams girly here, but really disappointing. It's very surprising after I really, really thought they would build on the success of last year. I mean, the success of last year really was a little bit unexpected. They did better than they were anticipating. And this was supposed to be the year where Williams were really going to be back. And it's far too early to judge. But it doesn't look great, guys, does it? Sainz finishing in 15th, 12th for Albon. It's not the results that anyone wants to see for them. So I'm hoping that as the season unfolds and Williams go on to develop, that we'll see better results than this, because both drivers definitely deserve it. The whole team deserves it. That's been a real shame. And the only other little thing that I thought was kind of a shame was I would have liked to have seen Cadillac have both cars finish the race. I think that was kind of a little building block for them. They knew they weren't going to come out and set the track alight. They weren't going to be in the points. But for that first goalpost to be both cars finishing the race, it was a real, real shame to see Bottas packed up like he was. So, now's the section where we talk about my predictions, which I think it's time to hang up the prediction hat, to be quite honest. I didn't do awfully well, it has to be said. In my race preview episode, I predicted the first 5 finishers. I predicted Piastri in 5th place, and that's clearly a no. Leclerc, I predicted in 4th, which, he went one better with 3rd, so that's not too bad. But it's not right. I predicted Verstappen for 3rd, which, as we know, is also not true. I predicted Russell in 2nd place, and as we know, he won it. And I predicted Norris to win. I think I may be a little guilty of overhyping and expecting more from the McLarens at this early stage than we're really going to see. I'm not even going to talk about my season predictions because, oh my goodness, I'm just going to sweep that under the carpet and pretend they never happened, because so far I don't think I could be more wrong. When it comes to hit the mark and pull over and park, well, that's a mixed bag, isn't it? Because my hit the mark, I said, was going to be McLaren, that everybody was sleeping on McLaren, that they were going to come hot out the blocks and they were going to do oh so well. Now, while they didn't do terribly, obviously Oscar didn't make it to the race, which is an absolute shame. So we don't know how well Oscar would have done. I suspect possibly a bit like Lando, he would have more or less stayed where he was, but we'll never know. Nothing negative to say about McLaren this weekend, but nothing overly positive either. So I would say my hit the mark didn't hit the mark this week. My pull over and park, that I did say when I picked them that it was low-hanging fruit, because I did pick Aston Martin, but it's not exactly a shock, is it, really, that we could see where that was going to go. I must admit, when I did record and say pull over and park for Aston Martin, this was pre how bad things got with the vibration of the power unit, etc. But yeah, I did kind of pick the low-hanging fruit there. And while I say, yeah, I got that right, that really wasn't much of a challenge to get that right, was it? So, what did you think, guys? Who was your hit the mark this week? Who was your pull over and park? Who do you think did really, really well? It was definitely an interesting race, wasn't it? Probably more exciting at the beginning than it went on to be. But as I say, my jury is still out a little bit on these regulations. I think it's too soon to say. There's good and there's bad mixed in there. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens at a track that's quite different Then we've got that coming up this weekend in China, so I guess we'll see what unfolds there. The final little section on race reviews will be a flattering ram, and that will be me picking out something or someone or a circumstance that I noticed over the weekend that I think deserves pointing out and deserves a little bit of praise. And this week's flattering ram for the weekend is Alex Albon. Alex unfortunately broke down in FP1, and not only did he considerately try and get the car as close to an appropriate marshal's post where the car could be recovered from, once he was out of the car, rather than standing to one side, taking off the helmet and gloves, waiting for recovery, waiting for someone to pick him up and get him back to the pits, he mucked in and he helped the marshals move his car. It did make me wince a couple of times because his left foot was quite close to the front left wheel when they were trying to move the car backwards. And I did have a little, as a marshal, bit of a wince now and again of like, please, mind your foot. It does not want dragging under that front wheel, trust me. And these little things really mean a lot. Not that I would have judged any driver for standing there, taking off the helmet and gloves and having a little think and being caught up in that moment of, what went wrong. But he had absolutely no hesitation in getting involved and helping the marshals to move his car out the way. And I think that absolutely deserves a bit of recognition. So thank you, Alex. That was a really nice gesture. So that's it for the Australian race review. Coming up next will be the Chinese Grand Prix, and we don't have long to wait because that's coming up this weekend. I'll be back on Thursday with a Chinese race weekend preview, and I'll make some more ridiculous predictions that'll go spectacularly wrong, and at least you'd get a laugh out of it. So that's something, isn't it? So I'm signing off for now, guys. Please subscribe and give us a follow on social media because, as I've said before, it really does mean the absolute world. Thank you so much. Take care, and I'll see you back here on Thursday. Don't forget, cheesy tagline time. That Tracks F1 podcast. Track the action, join the fun. Bye, guys.